The second movie isn't always like the first, is it? Sometimes it's even better. Or is it? On this episode of Moving Panels, we discuss Elektra. Welcome to Moving Panels, the podcast where we discuss movies and TV shows based on, inspired by, and adapted from the world of comic books. I'm your host, Laramie Wells, and joining me today in the co-host chair from the Pop Culture Roulette podcast, it's Nicholas Pepin.
Hey, how's it going?
It's going, just like this movie does. It just goes.
Well, I'm beginning to think that I'm your go-to bad movie guy.
We did Blade.
That is true. Blade was good, but then we did
Blade's
Hulk.
not a bad movie.
Then we did Hulk.
Yeah.
And now we're doing this one. Now, granted, most of them have been self-imposed, so I guess I can't blame you, but
listen, you did sign up for them. And just go ahead and give a spoiler here. Next week, two of us, along with Tim Williams, are going to actually talk about bad superhero movies and decide which one we think's the worst.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, that was a lot of fun, and I'm hoping that the listeners will have fun either agreeing or disagreeing with us on that one.
And this was one of the movies on that list, so you'll have to kind of get a feel of how we feel about it listening to this episode, and then see how we felt about it when we put it up against other bad movies. And I know we're already saying bad movie, but everybody knows Elektra is not really a a movie that people think fondly of when they think back to superhero films.
No, and I think it's not a movie that has aged well. Because I seem to, and I can prove it to myself by how I rated it on IMDb.
Yeah.
And then I went back and I had to edit my IMDb rating because I hadn't watched it in a long time. Kind of a recency bias thing. Like when you see it, you're like, but now you're like, oh, with everything else we have, oh man.
Yeah, the CGI is something that as I'm rewatching it, I'm going, man, I know this was 2005, but this is some bad CGI.
Well, I mean, and we talked about it a little bit with when we did Hulk a couple months ago, that there's not as much of an excuse because they did have Blade, Spider-Man, and a few other movies. But I mean, I think at the time I was just so happy to have a comic book movie from any company that it was hard for me to be like that was terrible. And as well, I'm sure we'll bring up, or I'll bring up time and time again, Jennifer Garner.
And just to think that this movie comes out and then 3 years later we would get the MCU kicking off with Iron Man. Like it's amazing just how sometimes I don't think about how close these movies really were.
You know what? Until you just put it right there in black and white for me, I didn't think about it either. I was like, man, they're so far apart, but 3 years.
Yeah, and sometimes I even forget how Kevin Feige was already a part of it. Like he's a producer on this movie.
Oh, so he learned early what not to do.
Well, yeah, probably from following Avi Arad, but yeah, it's
Now granted, for me, I think the reason why it feels so far apart was that in 2005, I was living in Florida. And in between 2005 and 2008, I moved from Florida to Wisconsin to Virginia to California, back to Virginia. And
wow.
So I was somewhere in Virginia when Iron Man came out. So there was a lot of upheaval in my life at the time. So there might be a reason why I can't put those two right next to each other.
I mean, you're jumping around drastic locations the same way this movie does. So, but let's go ahead and get into it. So we've talked about our thoughts about this movie prior already, but the movie was released January 14th of 2005. I don't know why they decided to release it then. You would think maybe wait another month and do it as a Valentine's movie, maybe. I would think that could get guys and girls into the theater. But did you see it in the theaters, or did you see it when it came out?
Absolutely,
You did?
I saw it in the theaters.
I don't think I did. I don't think I saw it until after it came out on video. I don't remember seeing it in theaters. So, yeah, I don't think I did. I know I saw Daredevil in theaters in 2003, but I don't think I saw Elektra. I don't think I had the interest in it at the time. So, I've got to point this out. This is me as the math teacher. Not a big fan of using the sigma as the letter E, considering that is not the Greek letter E.
Yeah, I there's a lot of things that don't make sense, and
Yeah, which I have a whole list of them.
yeah,
Yeah.
I've got some things on my list here too, but
What did you know about? Were you familiar, or are you familiar? I guess now with the director Rob Bowman.
um, you know what? I did kind of briefly look over, but I've forgotten most of him. I can't think of where he came from.
So, well, he directed Airborne. Do you remember the movie Airborne?
No.
Yeah, most people don't. He was actually very successful on television with the X Files. Directed a lot of great episodes of the X Files, and even he was the director of the first X Files movie.
Okay. All right, so I am familiar with his work then.
And he directed Reign of Fire.
Oh, well, so he's not so good with movies, but TV, all right.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, no, and when I looked him up, was looking more. I also found out he is also the guy behind Castle, which I was a big
Oh,
fan
I
of
love
Castle.
Castle. I mean,
Yeah,
I think I loved X-Files more if I had to compare the two, but I did love Castle.
yeah, he was both a writer and a director on Castle. I did find out that at one point Oliver Stone was gonna direct this movie.
Yeah, I saw that. And
Yeah,
quite honestly, I think it's for the best he didn't.
yeah, I'd be very interested in an Oliver Stone directed superhero movie.
Yeah, I remember reading something about what he wanted to do with it, and I was like, man, that would have gone every bit as badly as the James Cameron Spider-Man would have.
Well, he wanted Gabrielle Reese to play Elektra.
Which, I mean, I feel like, and part of the problem with Elektra in this movie is that you need an actual actress. Not to say that Jennifer Garner isn't an actress, but spoiler alert, she didn't want to be in this movie. Like she wanted out,
No,
but it
she
was
was, yeah, contract. Yeah.
contract. So I feel like, that was back in the day when they didn't care about trying to get things right. I can't say, because I did look up Gabrielle Reese's IMDb, and there's a lot of her just being herself on TV
Yeah,
shows.
because she's a volleyball player.
Right.
She's not an actress.
Well, I mean, Jason Statham was a diver, so, it's not like there isn't
Yeah.
but, she hasn't exactly gone on to like a super successful acting career that you're like, wow, man, maybe she could have pulled it off.
I mean, Mark Wahlberg eventually pulled it off, so
Yeah, it
it
took him a
can
while,
happen.
but
Yeah, it can happen.
it's like Green Day and
All
their
right.
guitars. Eventually, if you hold them long enough, you get good at it.
Wow. Okay.
I
Um,
I have a special level of hatred for Green Day, but that's another podcast altogether.
yep. Good Riddance was actually my high school graduation song. So
Okay.
just to throw that one out there. All right, let's get into the characters. I'm going to list them off really quick, and then we can go back and talk. So you got Elektra, played by Jennifer Gardner, fresh off the success of 13 Going on 30. So she was riding high with 13 Going on 30. Alias was a big hit. In fact, there's a lot you can find out there about them having to film this movie between a hiatus of her filming Alias. Then she makes this movie, and then she follows it up with Catch and Release. You remember Catch and Release?
Yes, it has Kevin.
Yeah,
It has Kevin Smith.
it
In
has
it.
Kevin Smith in it. Yeah,
Yeah. So yeah, I'm fully aware of this movie.
yeah. Then we've got Stick, played by General Zod himself, Terrence Stamp, or as many of you might remember him as his great character performance in The Haunted Mansion. That's another one to remember there. Then we've got Mark and Abby Miller, played by Goran Vinicic. I always don't know how to pronounce his name. Pretty much the George Clooney replacement from ER. And Kirsten Prout. We got Roshi, played by... I mean, I just look at him and I immediately think Shang Tsung from Mortal Kombat.
Right.
But Kari Hiroyuki Tagawa. I apologize to him if I mispronounced part of that. You got Karigi, played by Will Yun Lee, who I more recognize now from The Good Place. Not The Good Place, The Good Doctor. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but he would come back in another comic movie. He was in The Wolverine.
Yes. I'm familiar with him from. I can't necessarily point and go, oh, I know him from that, but he's one of those guys that's like, oh, I know him.
I know that guy.
I know that guy.
Moving on to actors you probably wouldn't ever recognize. You have McCabe, Elektra's quote unquote agent, which we can talk about, played by Colin Cunningham.
Uh,
Typhoid, played by Natasha Malith. We got Stone, played by Bob Sapp, who I swore was going to be related to Warren Sapp, but he is not. Tattoo, played by Chris Ackerman. And Kinku, played by Edison Ribeiro. So that was the main ones I focused on, although one of them, I don't know if you'd call main, but I had to include him anyway. Let's go ahead and ask the question, and then we can talk about these characters a little bit more. So, Nicholas, who of that group would you want it to see more of, and who did you want to vanish in a poof of green smoke?
I will say Colin Cunningham. I it's one of those like going back and watching it. I'm like, oh, but when he was on Falling Skies,
Okay, I
and
didn't watch that, but
oh,
I know of it.
it's really good. And then there was a really like super heavily cheesy show called Blood Drive. It was only on Sci-Fi for one season. It was
Okay,
insane. It was not. I don't know how Sci-Fi Channel aired it because it wasn't really a Sci-Fi Channel. It was more of an HBO level show than Sci-Fi.
yeah.
But it's
Well, I mean, they did the same thing with Happy
that
not
is
that
that
long
is
ago.
true. But Blood
Yeah,
Drive, I mean, Colin Cunningham is one of those actors that like I know I'm in for a good time. Not necessarily a good movie or a good show, but he
yeah,
uh he brings a level of commitment and a level of crazy. So,
yeah.
but
Little.
I forgot that I had seen him in this movie before I had seen all that other stuff. It's
Well, I wasn't familiar with him, but I kind of agree with you. Like he does bring there's he probably there's more life to his character than I think there is to anything else in this movie.
and all of the characters who end up in a poof of green smoke are pretty much the ones I would send to the poof of.
Yeah, yeah. Of course, McCabe, who Colin Cunningham plays, he's not from the comics. He's one of the few characters that are not. He's created for the movie, although there is a connection to the name McCabe in the comics, but we can get into that when we get into the moving panels. So let's go ahead and jump into Elektra then. So what were your thoughts? So first, Elektra, as I always like to give the background, Elektra first appeared in Daredevil number 168 in January 1981. She is a creation, as many of these characters are, of the great Frank Miller. But I've always had, this has always been my problem with Elektra. She has the worst secret identity ever.
Because she just uses her name.
Yeah. She just uses her name, which when you go back and you go through the story of how her and Matt Murdock were in a relationship in college, and then she later returns as a villain, like how Matt doesn't just immediately go, "Hey, wait,
Right,
you have the same name."
because I know so many women named Elektra. Like I've never met
Yeah,
one in real life. Like there's
yeah.
yeah,
And I
that
love that throwaway line too of from the Greek tragedy. Your parents must have had a sense of humor. Nah, not really.
yeah, I mean, I cannot say for certain how familiar I was with the character before the movie. I mean, I was thinking about it, and I think when it comes to Marvel, like I'm probably a bigger fan of the street level characters. So your
Mm,
Daredevils, your Elektras, your Luke Cage, Iron,
yeah,
not the co
the
like
Defenders.
yeah, I don't necessarily get into the cosmic characters as much. I mean, I am a big Thor fan, but it is like like I don't know, like I really I think I enjoy the street, so I am aware of these guys, and I have a lot more Elektra books and Daredevil books down in my collection than I do like the Guardians or
Yeah.
the X-Men or anything like that. So
So, what were your thoughts on? I know she had already played Elektra in Daredevil, but what are your thoughts of Jennifer Garner being Elektra?
I don't have a problem with it. I thought she did. I mean, I thought she has the look. She clearly has the acting chops to do it. Again, it goes back to she either didn't enjoy her experience on Daredevil or because that movie had gotten so panned, like you could tell she didn't really want to be in this movie.
Yeah, there's a lot of a stoic nature to her
And
where she's just flat
yeah,
on almost everything.
and it's hard to know for certain if she was just trying to do something or be a certain type of character, or if it was because she really was just like, I don't want to be here. Yeah, yeah, whatever. We have to go over here, and yet, oh yeah,
Yeah,
oh we, yeah, okay.
yeah. Uh, anything you want to say about Terrence Stamp and him doing a horrible job playing a blind guy?
I no, I mean it's Terrence Stamp. I mean, you get what Terrence Stamp gives you. I mean, he's obviously, he's got a very long career.
Yeah,
I mean, general. I mean, he's done a lot more than just General Zod and Haunted Mansion. But yeah, I mean, I think other than the supporting characters, like your main cast, those two in particular, really just were like, yeah, we have to be here because it's a paycheck.
yeah. And I mean, the stick character you talked about being in the into the lower level characters. The stick character is more associated with Daredevil
Right,
than he is with Elektra. I mean, he trained both of them in the comics.
right.
Um, and it's just weird having him in this movie, and there is zero mention of Daredevil at all.
Yeah,
I just
especially
I find
since
that very weird.
they cut the one Daredevil scene
Yeah,
flashback.
which is bad. I
Yeah,
mean, it's Ben Affleck in just like what, a sweater and some blue jeans, and he a sweatshirt or whatever he was wearing.
right. Yeah.
What about your thoughts on Mark and Abby? So characters created just for the movie to be the the linchpin to the whole story.
I mean, it seemed like such a random. And again, I think it comes from an era of comic book movies where they were more interested in just doing the name than the comics themselves because
Hmm.
they didn't do really I mean, there's probably a version of this story somewhere with different characters, but it just seemed like they were just like, I mean, there's so many things you could have picked from to just up and
Yeah,
invent characters and then randomly
yeah.
give the girl, like, did she have superpowers, or I didn't really know
You
what
mean
was going on there.
you mean her jump rope of truth that
Right.
she
Yeah.
yeah, she had there. Yeah, and that's the thing about the treasure and her being the treasure, which Terrence Stamp Stick's little narration at the beginning, which is always a good sign of a good movie. When they give the, like legend foretells at the beginning of a movie, that's always a good indicator that you know what you're getting into. But the whole treasure thing, like I was so confused by that, especially once they kind of reveal that, or not kind of reveal, she flat out says it when Typhoid says, I used to be the treasure. And I'm
Right.
like, wait, so if you were the treasure and you work for the hand, why didn't, as they said, the treasure would shift the balance over? It made no sense.
I don't think that these guys were paying attention to their own script as much as they thought they were.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, that goes into that location thing. Kind of getting into the movie art here. Like, where was this movie? Like, where was it set? Because you've got scenes like when they go to the bar to confront Stick that looks like they're back in New York, but then you've got them on this remote island that's somewhere in Canada, I guess is what you would have to assume. Then you're all of a sudden at this fancy house, which I would assume is in Greece because it's her childhood home.
Yeah, they don't really explain the travel at all.
Yeah. And
Um,
then Styx little training center that looks like it's up in the mountains of the Himalayas or something.
yeah,
And it's all Christmas time. Let's not forget that little
oh,
throwaway line.
yeah, yeah. I mean, they kind of with the beginning, well, in when she's fighting all the random guys and then kills that guy that nobody talks about ever again.
Yeah, Jason Isaac. Yeah.
Yeah, who it's snowing and it's supposedly cold.
Hmm.
Yeah, they're all dressed up in big old jackets and she's running around in her little leather outfit, but
Yeah, so confusing. Which of the I guess group of villains did you did you actually think worked? Because I don't think any of them did.
I mean, I guess the main guy, Kurugi,
Karigi, yeah.
Karigi, yeah. I mean, I guess him just for lack of. I mean, if I had to pick somebody, because like I mean, Bob Sapp, God bless him, was trying his hardest, but clearly not an actor. And if you look at his IMDb page, he doesn't try
Yeah,
being an act. He does. He kind
no,
of
he's
gives
a
up.
fighter.
He
Yeah.
kind of gives up on being an actor pretty fast. Um,
I will say the McCabe shooting him with the buckshot and then him just wiping it all off is one of the coolest moments of the movie. But here's something interesting. The character of Stone that he is playing in the comic books is a female character.
yeah,
And she has the same ability, but she can only do it if she knows the attack is coming.
that's kind of a
Which means that gunshot would have killed her, and Elektra stabbing him in the back would have worked because he would not have known either one of those were coming.
yeah. I did look up tattoo because I was like, what is his power? And again, I think it was another gender swap they did.
Okay, so that one's a little bit more interesting. So there are actually several characters named Tattoo, and a lot of people think that it's the kind of the main one, which is a female character, and all she can do is like send messages through her tattoos. But there actually is another character that's from a really random ver- random side of Marvel in a comic called Gentix. And this character Tattoo, which is a male, appeared in Gentix #2 in 1993, and he has the exact same powers,
Oh,
where his tattoos come to life, and even if it was like a sword, like he could pull the sword out of his body. There's also a guy in DC that I think is called the Tattoo Man, who has the same ability.
probably. I mean, Marvel and DC are always ripping each other off, which is why they never sue. Well, why they very rarely ever sue each other.
Yeah, but then Kurgi, however you pronounce it again. He's a one that came out in that same run with Frank Miller. He was introduced to Frank Miller, but his power set is different. Now in the comic, it's implied that he can't die because he is stabbed by Elektra. Kind of the same way that Bullseye stabs her. She even decapitates him at one point, and the hand just put his head and body back together. But in this one, he's got like, is it teleportation? Is it speed?
I
And then
I don't
does he
know.
have some sort of power over bed sheets?
Yes, he
Um,
clearly has power over bed sheets, and yeah, I don't know. I mean, well, for that matter, if we're going to talk about different power sets, I mean, I don't remember too much about Elektra ever having anything other than just like enhanced, fighting, enhanced speed, like
yeah,
nothing like maybe a slight level of telepathy or,
yeah. There's one run in which she has a slight little like psychic ability. Um,
but not this,
but it
future telling
yeah,
thing.
not this not this Nicolas Cage in Next
Yeah,
power where yeah she can see what's gonna happen before it happens, and or she can see where someone is. Yeah, her and but going back to Karigi, he shows that one time with McCabe where he can see something that McCabe couldn't have even had seen, like when he touches McCabe's head and then sees them escaping out of the in the orchard,
yeah,
and that made no sense.
right. And I do feel like Elektra's power set changed even within the movie. So,
Yeah, like her ability to throw that sigh at the end.
right.
I mean, you realize how hard she had to throw that for it to go through that many of those hedges?
Now, there is one superpower that apparently she had that really was, well, completely unnecessary. Apparently, when fighting, there's a fan down by her feet
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
that keeps her hair blowing, but yet never
yeah.
messes it up. It's always still perfect.
Well, it's that there's that the introduction to her when you first see her in the movie, and there's like wind blowing at her from all different directions. In fact, as she turns, you almost wonder if they were sitting there going, "Oh my God, her hair's going to be in her face. Her hair's going to be in her face," and maybe they adjusted one of the fans to blow it off. but you're going, wait, isn't she inside at this point? Like
Yeah,
she's inside the
it
house.
was jarring enough or so obvious that I wrote down unnecessary hair wind and opening fight.
Yeah. And then when they're out in the woods and she's doing like the speed running, but yet it takes her forever to get there.
I did now that I'm going back through my notes. You brought up Mark Miller. Um, Fake name brought out of nowhere, not a comic book reference, just kind of a, and obviously it ends up not even being his real name. I do think it's
Yeah.
super weird that they picked Mark Miller
Yeah.
as Mark Millar is definitely at
Yeah.
this point like a big powerhouse in comic books. Like maybe I'm
Yeah.
just making too much of it because Millar is one of my personal favorites. Like his Ultimate runs and just his not DC or Marvel stuff like Kick Ass and some
Yeah.
of that. Some of my favorite books. So I
I
just
mean, Old Man Logan.
yeah. I mean
Yeah, yeah.
he's up there for me when it comes to writers. So that name kind of was like really like Mark Miller, Mark Millar, like all right, whatever. I mean, it's probably coincidence, but
Yeah, but you never know. I mean, his movies would get going a few years after this with Wanted. 'Cause
but
wasn't that his first comic that got turned into a movie?
it might have, but I don't know where he was I don't know where they've given him credit in the because I know he wrote Civil War as well, but that happened after Wanted.
Yeah, no, Wanted was I think 2007, 2008. I
Yeah,
think was Wanted,
because
and then of course Kick Ass and the Kingsman and
I
uh,
had read Wanted before I went and saw it in the theaters. So there's the version of Wanted that I want to see, and there's the version that we got.
yeah, yeah, yeah. That'd be a fun one. Hey, you want to do that one? We can, we can go ahead, put you down for that. You kind of just volunteered.
Apparently.
All right. Anything else you want to talk about character wise? Any portrayals?
No,
Anything else?
I mean I have some just random movie bits, but I mean I guess Typhoid Mary. I mean, granted they only called her Typhoid,
The only card typhoid. Yeah.
but
Let me ask you this, and I don't want to come across as insensitive or anything. Talking about going back and rewatching the movie and kind of the way my mind interpreted things. I envisioned when I think back to this movie of her being played by an Asian actress, but she's Norwegian.
yeah, I mean, I guess since everybody else, most of the other, the hand are Asian, maybe, somewhere in your brain it gets, she doesn't necessarily have the cliche Norwegian look to her.
Yeah,
I mean, she isn't the big, 6'3" blonde.
yeah,
She definitely has more of a, I mean, the blackish brown hair, the more tan skin, but
and talking about powers, like her powers don't match up with
no,
Typhoid Mary
and
out of the comic.
they don't
Her
even,
power is I can kill plants, but not people.
yeah, and it just, I feel like, I mean, you could almost do Typhoid Mary now. I think they even did in the Daredevil show, if memory serves.
They did in the second season.
Yeah,
Alice Eve.
right.
Yeah.
But I just, again, it's one of those like we want the name, we don't want the character.
Yeah, because in the comics, she's just like she has telekinesis. She has uh, pyrokinesis. She can do like that power that I forgot which number it is. Umbrella Academy, where she says I heard a rumor. She can make the suggestive mental
Oh, okay.
thoughts.
Yeah.
She's actually in the comic book. She's again talking about that DC connection. She's very similar to Crazy Jane,
Yes.
where Typhoid Mary actually has different personalities. Because there's Bloody Mary, there's Typhoid Mary, there's whatever her real name is, and each one of those identities has their own power or their own level of a power.
Yeah. And then they did this one where she's like Poison Ivy, I guess. I don't.
Yeah, Poison Ivy or whatever that character is from Mortal Kombat that has the kiss of death.
Oh.
But yeah, it's weird. And again, she's not successful at anything. I don't know what her intention was at the beginning when she blows the kiss at the guy at the table who doesn't stand, and then she full on lock lips with Jennifer Gardner, but that doesn't end up working. And then she just she doesn't even do a kiss. She just goes, hey, this is hard for a podcast, but she just goes to Abby.
I don't know. And I mean,
she just breathes on Abby.
Somehow Elektra coming back from the dead made her immortal, I guess.
And I guess technically she did kill Abby because Elektra had to bring Abby back.
Yeah.
But still, not very successful. Although, and even though I joked about it earlier, her death scene, her taking the sigh to the face, and I know you don't actually see it, but ooh.
Yeah. Now, since you did a lot more research into the comics, I don't remember in the comic books the hand, like if you kill one of them turning into a green puff of smoke.
No.
Okay.
No, that's definitely something they stole from Buffy the Vampire Slayer. No, I think that just had to do because I read a quote from Rob Bowman where he said this movie was 12 frames away from being a rated R film.
Okay.
And I think it just had to do with they didn't want the dead bodies. You know, you really don't see anything that's graphic in nature. Like I said, even Typhoid getting hit in the face with the sigh, you just see the sigh right as it's coming at her face, and then they cut away.
Right.
The most gruesome thing you see is McCabe's head get cut off, but there's even no blood. It's just a clean.
Yeah. No, you're right.
Cut.
And all right, I didn't even think about that as the reason why they did it, because like the body just explodes into green dust rather than seeing, a dead body.
Also, since you mentioned that, it makes me think about stone. So stone can withstand just about anything except a tree falling on him.
Right. And how long did it take that tree to fall?
Yeah.
I mean, he hits it, it starts falling over. He has time to turn around, run over, and start smashing.
Oh, he moves around, yeah.
Start smashing the tree. Like I have never seen a tree take that long to fall. Like it was and it aimed for him. Like it just.
Yeah. He just ended up, even though he had already moved a few times, he happened to end up right up under it.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, that was kind of like, I was like, wait, he took a shotgun to the chest, a side of the back, a couple other things, but a tree falls on his head. Poof. Green smoke.
Yeah. And then also Tattoo, since we're talking about all their deaths, Tattoo apparently completely vulnerable if his tattoos are alive. Like he's not even aware of his surroundings.
Yeah, that was. I mean, you're gonna hear it in next week, but the character of Tattoo is just terrible. And then
is he more terrible than I mentioned him just because he's part of the group, but the Kenku guy, the guy who seems to have no powers.
Okay, here's how bad that was. I looked him up because I was like, wait, who is this guy? And then they had a picture of him at the meeting when he had when Karuji had the group say, "Oh, Dad, you're not doing it right." And I didn't remember him being there. Like he was all of a sudden I was like, "Wait, who is this guy all of a sudden fighting with that? Like where did he come from? Wait, he was there the whole time?" Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, I completely forgot he was there. Like I just didn't I didn't notice him until right before he died.
Yeah, he's the first one taken out and he's killed by Mark Miller. And of course, that also when Abby reveals her powers. But yeah, the character is not from the comics. He's the one that not even the name is from the comics. He didn't appear to have, for a minute there, I thought that maybe he had a power with the knives. He could control the knives or something, but then that doesn't happen. And he doesn't seem to have any ability. And then, he's hit by a knife and just poof. There he goes. Gone.
Yeah, and taken out by the guy who has little to nothing to do with in the rest of the movie other than just stand there.
What seems to be the problem, pal?
There's just so much pain in the world, so many issues. I don't think I can bear it.
Hell, friendo, it sounds like you could use a dose of pop culture roulette.
Pop Culture Roulette? What's that? Some sort of pop culture themed podcast or something?
That's right, sonny boy. When hope seems far, dive into some PCR.
But I already get my entertainment news from Variety.
Huh, that's pretty good. If you're a chucklehead, PCR gives you news you need, condensed, unfiltered, and raw, from three nerds who know a little something about something.
Wow, okay, sign me up.
That's the spirit. Pop Culture Roulette. New episodes every Monday, available on all major podcast directories.
All right, well, let's go ahead and get into the moving panels. We've already been talking about a lot of it. Of course, there are some loose connections. Of course, Elektra. We saw this in Daredevil. Elektra was killed by Bullseye in the comics in Daredevil 181. She is brought back to life in Daredevil 190, although she would die again later. But that's a whole different storyline. And what's funny, the reason I wanted to bring this up is, so in the comics, the resurrection is actually being performed by the Hand, and not by Stick. And the Chaste is his group. They never refer to them in the movie, but his team, the right, guys in white that dropped from the trees. And it is actually, Daredevil comes in, they actually stop the resurrection, they get Elektra's body. It's kind of a long story. Daredevil does something that cleanses Elektra's soul before the ceremony is finished. And then it's actually Stone, because Stone's a good guy in the comics. Again, she is a good guy in the comics, and she's actually the one who finishes the ceremony that brings Elektra back.
Yeah, again, it's one of those, I wonder what they would do now, like how much better it would do now if you let a director who actually likes the character and likes the source material.
Yeah. Well, and again, that's where Kevin Feige comes in. That's why Kevin Feige took his power, is he's actually a fan of the comics.
Right. And then 3 years later when Favreau takes, his shot at it and, kind of shows the world how to do it. But
yeah. Well, you know what? We got Daredevil back from Netflix, and he's now in the MCU. Maybe they'll bring that Elektra back, even though they've already done the Resurrection storyline on Netflix. But maybe they'll bring her back.
I mean, I'm sure this is a whole nother one shot. And I know you've already did kind of a one shot on it, but it seems like we're going to be getting the Netflix actors, but not necessarily the Netflix stories.
Yeah, I'm very curious as they keep building that.
Since they've already brought at least two of the actors in from the Netflix stuff.
I mean, I'm extremely excited about Daredevil Born Again, because that is just a great comic, and so I'm hoping they do it justice with a 16 episode series.
Yeah.
But let's get back on track with Elektra here. The thing about Stick sending her away, because even though she's the most powerful, her heart is filled with hatred. That's actually from the comic. That was something that actually happened. Although in this movie, they kind of make it a throwaway, like don't really give it any. I love how it just comes back later. What, this was all a test? Yeah. Of course it was a test. That just seemed so, like they just needed that plot point.
Right.
But again, that it was from the comic. The other thing from the comic, which I mentioned earlier, was the name McCabe. So it's this made up character for the movie, but the name McCabe actually is from the Elektra comics. So in Elektra #1 in 1996, there is a teenage girl with her father, which again, kind of also maybe a little connection here. A teenage girl with her father, and they end up as bystanders during a fight with Elektra and Bullseye, and her father is killed, being too close to the fight. Elektra then takes, her name's Nina McCabe. Elektra then takes in Nina as her kind of roommate. It's kind of reminded me a lot of Catwoman. You know how Catwoman had the roommate, but takes her in as the roommate. She is then later killed, And just like we talked about earlier, how the Hand resurrected Elektra, the Hand actually resurrects Nina, and then they train her to then go after to kill Elektra. So very convoluted, but comics. That's comics,
as you do.
So part of me really wondered the name McCabe, and then the whole teenager being a fighter. And if that's not loosely where they're getting some of the idea, maybe there was more to this story originally. So I don't know. I did hear at one point that Mark Miller, the character of Mark Miller, was supposed to be killed earlier in the movie, and then they decided not to because they wanted the love interest.
Yeah, because that made any sense. Like, hey, I just met you. Now I'm madly in love with you.
Yeah, and you were hired to kill us, but let's make out.
Right. Yeah. I'm still getting over Matt Murdock here, but now I'm deeply in love with this guy.
Yeah. Okay, so we're bashing it, and we're about to bash it some more. So I want to take it. Let's make a little side turn. I want to talk about one of the things I absolutely love about this movie, and I talk about this a lot of the time: the cinematography. I'm not gonna lie, this is a beautiful movie. This movie is shot really well.
I'd agree with you.
Yeah. Bill Rowe was the cinematographer. There's some great shots. There's some great things that do remind you of those like classic martial art movies. Even with the floating bed sheets. I mean, there's something about it that is very reminiscent of movies. Like one of my favorite movies, and talking about cinematography, is the Jet Li movie Hero.
Okay.
It is just a beautiful movie to watch, and I get hints of some of that where you can tell that Bill Rowe, he was looking at this movie as a martial art kung fu classic movie, and I think that's what he was going for. It's just the story and the direction didn't really make it work.
No, yeah, I would agree with you. I mean, well, we'll get there, but I mean, it's not, like I said, it's Jennifer Garner isn't the problem, but she is. Like, I think had they found a way to get her interested,
yeah,
it doesn't necessarily make it a better movie. Maybe it saves it from ending up on the bracket that it's ending up on next week. But,
well, that financially, I think the only movie financially that has a Marvel movie that has done worse is Howard the Duck.
Yeah, and see that's where the movie industry really took the wrong lesson here, because they really were like, well, clearly it's because people don't want female-led superhero movies.
Yeah,
like that's not what happened here. The movie
No.
bombed because it wasn't good. Like it wasn't Jennifer Garner's fault. It wasn't the fact that people won't go see a movie with a woman. It has everything to do with the fact that like you guys didn't do a good movie. Like because when did Catwoman come out? Catwoman came out around the same.
It was after.
After?
It was after. Yeah.
But
yeah, this let me do a quick little Google search here. IMDb, thank you for help. Actually, no, it was before. It was 2004.
Okay. Because I know they were saying something about we wouldn't get another female-led superhero movie until Captain Marvel? No, Wonder Woman.
Wonder Woman.
Right.
Yeah.
So there's like almost a 10-year gap between Elektra and Wonder Woman. And it's like it's not Jennifer Garner's fault. It's not Elektra's fault.
No.
It's a bad movie. But the movie industry went, well, look, Catwoman bombed. Look, Elektra bombed. But it's like, guys, it didn't bomb because it was a woman. It bombed because it was bad.
Because even though it's not a comic book movie, I mean, Kill Bill came out in 2003.
Right.
And Kill Bill, not only a female-led action movie, but even most of the villains were female. I mean, that was a huge success.
Well, and again, that's where like Hollywood and their math or their thinking, like they're not gonna look at it and go, well, clearly Uma Thurman and Lucy Liu and all those people, that they're looking at it and go, well, it's Quentin Tarantino. What? No, you can't on one hand go, well, it's because it's a woman, and then ignore the fact that it worked over here. Like, yeah, it worked because Tarantino knows what he's doing.
Well, yeah, but then you also had, before this, you had Tomb Raider, with Angelina Jolie, which was successful.
That is true. But
I
yeah, I mean,
mean,
it's really one of those things that like Hollywood takes whatever lesson they want, whatever narrative they wanted to have, and says and uses that as proof. Like like they would, they'll use their movie math to justify anything. Like,
yeah. I feel like it's also that bias against comic book movies.
right.
Like we get all those quotes from, Martin Scorsese and all these other directors that talk about how much they hate comic book movies. And so I think it's that bias too of it's a comic book movie. Yeah, it can't be we can't have a female led comic book movie. There can't be a female superhero. No one wants a female superhero. Cause yeah, there's still, I mean,
Boys,
you had Catwoman, you
boys
have
won't
this.
pay for that.
Yeah.
Yeah, we will if it's good.
Yeah.
I mean, look at the first Wonder Woman movie. Look at Captain Marvel. Like those movies will make money if they're good.
But then now Wonder Woman's probably the exception here. But even Captain Marvel, there's all this hate on Brie Larson.
Yeah, well, that's just because the online trolls have.
Yeah, it makes no sense. But then you've got Bethany and I have talked about this, and we'll be coming back to talk about the rest of it. But that's been the whole thing about the She-Hulk series. Is just the attacks on it, mainly just because it's a female-led comic book story, and you're just like, dude, I mean, these work. They're good.
And that's,
yes, we've had these bad ones like this, but it can still work. It's not that we don't want it.
Yeah, I know that's not part of this episode, but that's why I loved that last episode of She-Hulk so much.
Yeah. Yeah. Which again, Bethany and I will be talking about that probably sooner than later, to be honest. So let's tackle. There's one more thing I want to tackle. I kind of want to ask your opinion on this. What was the point of her having OCD?
I think they wanted to just make the character. They thought maybe if they made her OCD, they'd make the character just that much deeper, or like give it another level.
Did it?
No, it was just
like it didn't serve any purpose.
No, and I think I feel like, I mean, you go back, you had brought it up earlier where the original script was under Oliver Stone and some other, like you talked about with Hulk, like there was so many generations of the script that who knows where that came in and nobody thought to take it out.
Yeah.
And like it wasn't really brought up before again. Like they kind of brought it up with the cleaning thing, but they never really specified that was OCD.
No. Which they've made that work. I mean, we talked about Jason Statham earlier. The Transporter movies. I mean, he's clearly very OCD.
Yes.
But they actually make it part of the character.
Right.
And it works, but it didn't make any sense.
I think that's why this movie didn't work as a whole. Like, because there's just so many little things where you're like, what is that? Like, where did that come from?
Yeah. That and having like the world's greatest assassin who can't be stopped by anybody unless they're blind or bed sheets. Because let's point out, Elektra gets beat by both Daredevil and Stick. Like, she gets beat by both blind guys she ever encounters. And then her powers her little Nicolas Cage next powers don't even help her with the bed sheets. Like, she thinks she's seeing ahead, but then he's not there when she goes to stab. And it's just...
Yeah, that scene was just so bizarre. And again, with the hair blowing, it just... Yeah.
Oh, that reminded me of something else. Going back to Jason Isaacs' little, exposition at the beginning where they're trying to set up Elektra to be somebody that, we should be. Ooh, she's mysterious. When he says, they say she whispers in your ear before she kills you. Who would have said that?
Until you said it. No, I mean, I should have caught that. Yeah, because if she's whispering in your ear and killing you, you're not telling anybody about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, unless she's leaving witnesses, which she clearly doesn't, you know.
So I think we've said enough, and we've kind of shown our hands a little bit. But let's go ahead and get into our final decisions. Bag it, stack it, or trade it. Go ahead, Nicholas. What say you?
I guess stack it, because
Okay.
it's not terrible. It's not necessarily worthy of bagging and putting up on the wall. You know, it's just maybe worth keeping around.
Yeah.
Uh,
No, I'm in the same boat.
yeah, I had wrote the biggest crime this movie makes is that it takes a very interesting, potentially dynamic character and makes her boring.
Exactly. That is probably the
Yeah,
greatest way to put this.
yeah. So I
It
mean,
it's so dull.
yeah. So that's where I stand with it.
Yeah, I'm same. I said stack it, and for almost the same reasons. I mean, my notes here. I will say this though, it wasn't as bad as I remembered. I actually think I liked it a little bit more in this rewatch than I had remembered liking it. When I had originally watched it. It's bad though. I'm not gonna say it's good. It's bad. Um, it, to me, it's the pacing. The pacing is just weird. The way they go from this very big opening scene to then all of a sudden they just put a big old halt to it, and she's just hanging out in the house waiting for a call, and then it feels like we've kind of talked about. There's things missing. Like there were story elements that needed to be told that weren't told. Again, it's decent. It could have been worse. I mean, Catwoman is worse. Catwoman is a laughable movie. This I don't think is laughable, but like you said, it's dull.
Right.
It's just dull, and that's the one thing that hinders it. And the ending, I think, is also a good sign of that. We had movies like Spider-Man where you get the big ending of him swinging through the city, and then he swings right at the camera doing his thing. This movie, she just walks away, and then the credits start.
Yeah.
Like there's no, like, you know, you're not going to do anything cool. Like even if they had done something where she's walking away and then like something, I'm just trying to think off the top of my head. I know there really wasn't any vehicles, but let's say they did the thing where, like, you know, a car drove by and all of a sudden she was gone. At least something that indicates, you know, oh, she's still on the go. But no, she's just in her black trench coat, just walking away, you know, talks to Stick for a second, and then, all right, I'm off. And it's just dull. It was just boring.
Yeah.
That's where this movie suffers. It's just boring. But anything else you got to say about Jennifer Gardner's Elektra?
No, I think I've said it all. I mean, I
Yeah.
think, she clearly proved with Alias and a few other things here or there that she can pull the action hero off,
Yeah.
and
Peppermint. Do you remember
I
Peppermint?
haven't seen that. It's on my
Okay.
list and I do want to watch it, but I keep
Yeah.
forgetting.
It's a movie that just kind of fell under the radar, but she's pretty good in it in
Yeah.
terms of an action star.
Yeah. So, I mean, she has the chops. So again, like it wasn't necessarily the casting of Jennifer Garner as Elektra, especially at that time, is like, spot on perfect casting. It was just that it's whatever reason she didn't want to do it, and they were like, "Well, nope, too bad you signed a contract," rather than like, let's
Yeah.
figure out somebody who actually wants to be here. Yeah,
Yeah. It's
so
always bad.
I don't know. I mean, I think had they kept it street level instead of putting in these random, somewhat non-canon powers, it
Mm.
definitely would have been better. Like,
Yeah. If they had done something that was more of a, I mean, I hate to kind of compare it too much with Black Widow, but I mean, the two characters are very similar. But you know, if they had maybe kept it, again, I know Black Widow gets kind of the bigger stuff, and the Black Widow movie is kind of bigger. But if they had kept hers more of, almost like that opening scene was, kept her more of like a spy. I mean, I know she's a ninja, but make it more of a, you know, a covert mission, and you know, her actually having to use her skills to accomplish it. Yeah, I don't know. The trope of oh, my mission featured this little girl and now I have to protect this little girl. I mean, we've seen it done better. I mean, I mentioned Train Spotting earlier. I mean, not Train Spotting, Transporter.
Yeah.
I mentioned Transporter earlier. I mean, The Professional. I mean, we've seen it done better.
Right. Well, and the trope of like, we just met, now we're madly in love. Like,
yeah.
It's like so tiresome. Like, there's I mean, there are ways, and I hope now that Disney has, or Marvel has all these characters back under their umbrella, that maybe we will get a better version.
The Netflix version's not bad.
No, I mean, Elodie Young did a really well, good job.
Yeah,
And
the only bad in Netflix is Iron Fist. But that's another conversation.
That's everything I had in my notes. So
yeah, I think we've got it there, and I think we're gonna wrap it up there. Yeah. I mean, it's Elektra. It's okay. Like the moving panels. You put it on the poster. Moving panels says Elektra is okay. It's okay.
As long as you get that like question mark in there, it's okay.
It's okay. Yeah. 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 Well, that was just like my opening. Talking about sometimes it's even better, or is it? Because that's okay. I'm gonna ask you. We'll end it with this. Is Daredevil better, or is Daredevil worse? Because Daredevil's got some campy, and I'm not gonna speak because I'm biased. I'm a huge Daredevil fan.
Yeah.
But I'll ask you.
If I get to choose the Daredevil director's cut.
Nope, you don't get to choose the director's cut.
I would say that Elektra is a better movie than the theatrical version of Daredevil.
Yeah, see that's where I was. That's why I did the opening the way I did. Is it better? Like, did we get a better movie?
If I get to choose the Daredevil director's cut, then no.
No, yeah, and that's so I own the Elektra director's cut. I can't tell a difference between the theatrical and the director's cut. Like, I can't tell. Like, maybe some scenes are just a few lines longer, but I had heard like Rob Bowman say like, oh yeah, they gave me full reign on this director's cut. I don't see it. Whereas like, yeah, the Daredevil one, you get a whole subplot that just completely changes the tone of the movie. And
yeah, I mean, the director's cut makes it such a better movie. And I can't remember if you've done the Daredevil. I know you've talked about it before.
I haven't, yeah. I talk about it all the time, but we haven't actually done the movie yet.
But I mean, watching the special features on that one where Avi Arad tries to say that the theatrical version that he put out was so much better than the director's cut, was like, that's all I need to know about. You don't know. You need to be removed from these movies.
Yeah, you keep selling toys. Stop doing movies.
You clearly don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's end it there. Thank you, Nicholas, for joining us. Anything you want to promote or talk about with your podcast?
Not really. I mean, we just finished up that Halloween thing that I'll talk about again. Because I mean, that was a massive project. I'm trying to come up with some Thanksgiving stuff. I think I found an interesting way to do a Thanksgiving bracket. So hopefully that'll work. I think we're gonna do the Macy's balloons, but I haven't I haven't quite figured 100% how to build that one just yet. So working that out, but we're transitioning. We're definitely doing a lot more video with Media Pod Smash. So we're doing some interesting different things over there in the Media Pod. In the Media Pod Smash.
I watched Shell's video on the Halloween cereals.
Oh yeah.
And I actually I think I had purchased all of those cereals already for my daughters, so it was kind of fun. I actually just recently got the Hocus Pocus 2 cereal, so but yeah, check all that out. Check out everything that Nicholas has got going, and check us out. Follow us on social media. Like the show on whatever you're listening to us on, so that we can get that the extra push to get out there for other people, and tell your friends about us. Tell your friends about all of the podcasts. Pop Culture Roulette. Tell them about the 80s Flick Flashback. Tell them about Interview with a Horror Virgin. Go out there and do it all. But we'll end it there, and we will finish this talk and check out next week as, like I said, Nicholas and I are joined by Tim Williams from the 80s Flick Flashback, and we are going to break down what is the worst comic book movie. So check that out. But for today, for Moving Panels, I'm Laramie Wells, and I'll see you on the other side of the page.
Life moves pretty fast. If you don't stop and listen to an 80s Flick Flashback podcast once in a while, you could miss it. Do you love movies of a certain age? Do you miss the days of VHS tapes, VCRs, and the video rental stores? Does the thought of another 80s movie being remade seem inconceivable? My name is Tim Williams. I'm the creator and host of the 80s Flick Flashback podcast. On each episode, I'm joined by guest co-hosts to discuss one of the many movies released in the 1980s. We share our first-time watch memories, our favorite scenes, and even learn some behind-the-scenes stories about the cast and crew along the way. New episodes are released every other Friday on your favorite podcasting platform. So make like a tree, get out of here, and go listen to an excellent episode of the 80s Flick Flashback podcast. The ad is over. Go home. Go.